Yeah, there's definitely a danger that you could like burn a design by showing something too early. It's not finished, especially if you have like kind of a good idea and you haven't really worked it out. It's like an egg, you got to kind of protect a little bit. And if you show it in a bad light too fast, then you might kill it.
Hey everybody, I'm Jonathan Odom, maker, inventor, designer, and Autodesker. Welcome to Shop Talk, the podcast series where we talk to makers, inventors, and designers from shop to shop. Today, we're talking to Gray from Some Gray Things. Gray is a designer, less so a maker, but he's got some really good ideas about design, some good advice about how to approach the problem, and I think you're going to get some insight from this episode. Let's jump in. All right, Gray Dowdy, thanks for coming, man.
Yeah, thanks. You actually pronounced my name correctly too, which is cool. That doesn't happen a lot.
There was about a 50-50 chance of that coin toss. I decided to go with Dowdy. So good, good. Off to a
Yeah.
good start. Yeah. So just why don't you just tell us where you're from and how you got into industrial design in the beginning?
Yeah, I'm originally from San Francisco Bay Area, the Bay, as
Yeah.
we call it, from there. And I started in mechanical engineering, which is like a super common story. And I thought I was going to be doing industrial design. And then I started doing mechanical engineering and I saw industrial designers and I said, oh, that's what I thought I was going to do. So then I switched over basically over a few years.
So I did exactly the same thing. I went into mechanical engineering thinking that was going to be industrial design because I'd never heard of that. But I went to a state school in Louisiana that didn't have an industrial design program. So architecture seemed like it was the closest thing. I didn't realize there was a more of a pipeline, but that makes a lot of sense. That there's probably a lot of people going into mechanical engineering thinking they're going to like design products as opposed to, HVAC systems.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I get emails from like kids and students or like people that are mechanical engineers that say, "Oh, I want to switch." I think they somehow find me because they saw that I did that. But it's a thing you can do. It takes some effort because it's like a different skill set, but it's something you can do with some effort and grit.
Sure. Yeah. So you switched to industrial design. I'm guessing you got your degree in that.
Yeah, so I did a bachelor's in I started in my bachelor's in ME. And then like halfway through, I took this class that was part of the manufacturing engineering program. I think it was like a milling class or something. I was like, oh, this one you actually make stuff. I'm gonna switch into this program. So I switched to that. Then I graduated, switched, worked as a manufacturing engineer, but was kind of doing ME stuff. And then I switched to being a full ME in their job. And then I went back to school. It's like the whole path. And then went back to school for industrial design and got a master's in that basically.
So then from freelance, what did you end up doing from there?
Still freelancing.
Yeah.
It's great. I love it as long as clients are coming in, which at the moment seems to be picking up. I'm not sure what's going on, but the client projects are picking up right now, so I'm getting pretty busy. Um, yeah, it's cool. People come to me. They either want something to look better or they interact with it better or has a better sales pitch or all this stuff. It's basically like the funnest parts of developing a product. I somehow niched myself into. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy at the moment where I'm at.
The kind of work you do is the kind of work you get, right? Um, so,
Yeah, actually I heard one time I watched this. It was a like a what do you call this, like webinar kind of thing? It's one of those
uh
things. Some online interview, some graphic designer that I don't even know the guy's name anymore, but he just said like the work you show is the work you get. And that was such
yeah.
a turning point for me. Like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Cause I was like had all this like old mechanical stuff and I was getting requests for like mechanical engineering stuff. I was like, oh, maybe I should stop showing this for a while. And I actually got really shy about it for a bit. And then kind of realized it's a good strength. So I started showing it again. But yeah, that's the whole design game.
So how would you say you got that niche? How did you get to be the guy that, that does that makes stuff look better or work better?
I just did it. That's the only real answer. I just it was something I wanted to do, and I was working in an agency for a while, which had like totally random projects. It was like an innovation agency, so the whole agency was doing, like UX and service design stuff and business design stuff and industrial design stuff. So it was like a big mix of everything. So it's so random what I was getting to. And then when I wasn't at work, I would just work on product design projects that I wanted to work on. So basically passion projects. And I started showing that stuff off a bit more.
Mm,
Also, because a lot of my work stuff was like confidential, so I couldn't really show any of it anyway,
yeah.
and just kept showing that. And then eventually stuff like the projects I was doing started coming in. It's
Hmm.
yeah, I guess that's kind of how it works, which
Yeah.
makes sense when you look at it, but when you're like the middle of it, it's you have no idea what's going on, and you just
Yeah.
need someone to like tell you, or just need to figure it out.
It's something I always tell people who are interested in getting into whatever it is. It doesn't really matter, but you want to do a career change or you're a young person and you're trying to figure out where to go. I always tell people to just keep doing the things you're interested in, whether or not that's your job, and keep it up and put it out there too. However that is, whether it's social media or like meetups or whatever, that kind of thing.
Well, it's
Um,
a mix, because it's also at some point it's got to be. It depends what your goal with it is. Like for me, I love product design. If people stop paying me to do it, I'm still going to do that, and I know that for a fact because I do it on the side, whether I'm getting paid for it or not. So it's better for my life if someone's paying me to do it,
yeah,
but I'm going to keep doing it no matter what. So,
sure.
yeah, but it's also like got to be like you're saying, like do it on the start off doing it on the side. Like I was working in an agency, and then I started freelancing on the side first before I did that. And then at some point I had a big client like that we couldn't work with, that we basically were like, oh, let's just all leave and go work with them. So I left with some people and we started working on it. And yeah, so I had like this jumping point basically, but I started, slowly from that, which is definitely the way to do it.
Can you tell us a little bit about the projects you're working on now? I mean, obviously without, divulging any confidential information, but um,
Yeah.
where your clients are, type of products, that kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah, I'd have like 4 or 5 kind of active things going right now. One is a med device in Germany. So we kind of did the first round on it last year. And it's that's the thing with ID2. I'm gonna say everything super vague because they get, I sign NDAs, and I also respect client privacy, so I don't
Of
want to say
course.
anything. But I'm gonna say the most vague versions of what I'm
Yeah,
doing,
that's fine. That's fine.
which probably doesn't help. So med device, Germany, um, which is med devices have long timelines, so
Yeah.
it's kind of we're in the beginning of phases of it, but just doing, let's say, like how it looks and how you interact with it, testing the interactions and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like a slow crawl. I did doing some consumer tech stuff for uh, I think a startup, but they seem pretty well funded, so I guess they got money.
Mhm.
Um, so doing something for them in the Bay. Um, Doing another device for another company in the Bay, and there's one more. Oh yeah, doing kind of like a coffee machine type thing,
Yeah.
and doing some B2B stuff. So yeah,
Cool.
a lot of it right now is like path to production, the general idea, and like let's say like the PCB is kind of figured out. And we're just like putting the shell around it. That's what a lot
Hmm.
of this stuff is right now.
Okay, that's
So
interesting.
making yeah.
So the PCB, would you say that most of the time that's where you come in? The PCB's done. We're not moving any components on it. Figure out the enclosure and that.
No, I usually come in before that. So it'll be, let's say there's like a engineering validation prototype, maybe,
Uh-huh.
depends. Um, so I usually say like I'm kind of in the middle of the process. So I'm not doing the user research, like market research stuff that much, but I will take that and turn it into like either like a nice concept if it's really early, like, okay, here's a product we should make and let's test it out. Or we're ready to like, okay, we know we want to make this kind of product with these features. Let's make a design that we can start doing the DFM stuff on. And I do that kind of stuff. And then I used to do like the DFM, and I used to even work like introducing stuff into assembly lines and stuff, but I haven't really done that as much lately. But it's nice because I know how that stuff works. I can fall back on it.
I do this project every year where I lead a team and we design, develop, and manufacture a consumer product, and we make it at Autodesk University. So we have like this live factory set up where our partners are making the parts and we have the PCBs done beforehand and all that. So I'm able to work as though I'm this customer that has everything in house. So industrial designer, mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, manufacturing, all that stuff is in one place. And one of the big advantages of it with consumer products is that I can get a PCB, a 3D PCB from my electronics engineer, and then I can go in and physically move the components around to fit what I need them to do for the enclosure, right? If I need to make changes there. And then that just makes this kind of seamless connection where you don't really have to wonder what version are we on, what was moved where. It just kind of streamlines the process and keeps all the data in one place. Are you having to do that much in when you're dealing with consumer products at the stage where you're actually adjusting the PCB?
Yeah. So can you do all the electrical engineering stuff, or you just working
Yeah.
with somebody doing it? Oh wow, dude. You're
No,
a
me?
pretty
No,
talented
no.
guy.
No, I can't. I don't do circuit design. No, I got a guy.
No,
Yeah.
I
I
do.
understand enough about it to like, um, I understand enough to ask the right questions of the people who know what they're doing, right?
Okay.
Probably the same thing in your case, I would think, right?
That's yeah, exactly the same thing. Yeah. So it's all like negotiating
Yeah.
basically. I want something in a different spot because I think it'll make the whole product more premium or make the experience of using it better. So it's kind of asking to move stuff around. I get a little lucky because I know, I think what's doable and what's not. So I
Right.
know I try not to push if I think it's not actually something that's gonna work. But if I think it's something that's totally doable, I'll kind of push for it. And then I'll often, especially with like mechanical engineering related stuff, I'll make a suggestion like, hey, let's move the motor over here and do like a link or something,
Hmm.
um, without actually diving deep into it. Just that I kind of try to ask things. But it's also like, it's, you got to figure out which hills to die on.
Yeah. Your world, the industrial design world, and how you sort of navigate that, how a relationship starts, how you develop the product and pass it on for manufacturing and all that stuff. Um, a lot of people don't really have a clear picture of how that works. So, um, I'm just gonna give you my impression of that, and you tell me. But it seems like you start with sketches, right? So the first phase would be a lot of industrial design sketches, those really cool sketches everybody loves that Spencer Sketch a Day does and teaches you how to do, and like
Oh
you
yeah,
know
you talked to Spencer Nugent, right?
yeah,
Dude, you
he's
got to give me his number. He's the goat. I love
he
that
is,
guy. He
yeah,
seems like the coolest person
he's a
ever.
sweetheart too, man. Yeah, you should
Yeah.
totally talk to him. He's such a nice
Yeah.
guy. But yeah, like you do the industrial design sketches, you sort of lay them out for the client's interested in A, B, and C, and then you sort of take those and you start, maybe you're doing foam models from there, and then you start developing 3D models from there. That seems to me to be a pretty like kind of classical, what no, traditional maybe way to do it. Is your process like that, or do you dive straight into CAD, or like how does that work?
My process is a mess. I'm like the brute force designer. Like I'll
Okay.
just keep hacking at it until it works. And it really depends on the project. Like every project's different, which is like everyone hates that answer. It depends. Everything's different. That's the worst answer
Yeah.
you get, but that's what it is. Usually I'll get some briefing, kind of an idea what the client wants. I think that's always like the first part. Like what is this company trying to do? What's this brand trying to do? What are they trying to do with this product? And it's kind of just like having conversations like this, like talking. I watched some Instagram things where they said maybe you have ADHD if you're like this. And I was like, yeah. So I'm self-diagnosed from Instagram ADHD.
Sure.
So I think I get like I get floods of ideas when I start projects, and I just try to get them down. So I have a notebook, and I don't do like the sexy ID sketches as much as like trying to get ideas down on paper.
Yeah.
So I'll do like a single line drawing with like a thick fine liner kind of thing in a notebook, and just try to get ideas down. And then my process is kind of like slowly stepping up fidelity levels.
Okay.
So from there, maybe I'll do some like 2D sketches with some like rough materials and stuff to try to get an idea. I do a lot of prototyping. Like I have a 3D printer that's running
Hmm.
most days, all days, just like doing little tests and stuff. And I kind of have this mess of slowly upping the fidelity level while testing things along the way.
Hmm.
And then it's like I probably move pretty quick into 3D just because my high school had some Autodesk Inventor, I think,
Uh-huh.
licenses for some reason.
Yeah.
And I had this teacher that was just like, here's the computer, I'm going in my office. And that was the best, dude. I love that
Yeah.
class. So
Yeah.
we just like screwed around. So I've been doing 3D like a long time. So I'm pretty
Mhm.
comfortable and pretty quick in it. So I'll jump into that, and I kind of float between building stuff in 3D and rendering it, and then 3D printing things. And I just kind of do like this loop of sketch, 3D render, 3D print, or do some other kind of like prototyping if it's not 3D printable, and just kind of keep looping in that while like slowly increasing the level of detail. And at some point it gets to like, here's the final color, here's the
Yeah.
final surface finishes, here's the final surfaces of like how the surfaces flow and are like continuous and that kind of thing. And it's just like this ramp of like, it's like just constantly floating between expanding and doing a bunch of random ideas and then narrowing down. But I don't know. Maybe I should map it out sometime and make it less messy. But I honestly follow intuition most of the time.
Maybe your most recent video was the design trends video,
Yeah, I
like a
think
current
so.
one.
Yeah.
For those watching, if you go to that video and follow along, that seems to be kind of a picture of what you're talking about as far as a process, where you say, it's in this case, it's trend one is brutalism, trend two is soft modern or whatever. Like you're sort of taking those things and doing a starting point using the cues from that style, right?
Mm,
Which maybe we could think of as a client comes in and is like, hey, it should fit with our brand, so it needs to be more brutalist or something, and then you sort
yeah.
of start there. You got a super basic thing, and then you start applying features and textures and that kind of stuff. Is it similar to what you were showing in that video?
It's somewhat like it, but I don't want to give the impression that that's exactly how my process is. But it's for a video format and talking about trends. I
Yeah,
really like doing it that way, as a form
it's
details
fun.
and finishes,
Yeah,
and it's an easy, clear way to think about it. But when you're trying to make a new product design, a lot of it's coming up with one design concept and then like building the product around that.
yeah.
And sometimes the idea is like, hey, let's start with this good finish and build something around a really nice finish.
Mhm.
So it's not so linear like that.
I mean, I've talked to a couple other industrial designers on the podcast about that, and it seems to be a little bit more common. People kind of jumping into 3D a little faster because I don't know. Maybe it's you're more comfortable with it. Maybe it's a little easier to model in Fusion or than it would otherwise be. Something. This is something I used to run into when I was doing special effects, production design, that kind of stuff in the film industry, and also in architecture. You kind of see the same thing, but um, clients are sometimes they're turned off by a 3D model too early. So if they see a
Mm-hmm.
glossy render of something, they think that's the finished thing. That's the thing
Yeah.
that's actually going to be on camera, or
Yeah.
that's going to be my house, or whatever it is. So depending on the client, sometimes you intentionally make it rough in the beginning, right? You might even do something in 3D and then just sort of like trace it out and make it look a little bit more hand done. You could even do like there's these ugly filters in some, you know, architectural products that give you like sketch lines so it looks like it's done by hand and it's like
Okay.
it just, I mean, it looks like terrible, you know, to
Yeah.
us that, you know, like understand drawings and stuff, but it's miraculous. Sometimes you just put that filter on and it's like, oh, yeah, I could maybe be okay with that, as opposed to I don't like it, you know, just
Hmm.
because it doesn't seem like it's finished. Do
Yeah,
you
for
ever find
sure.
that, or are people maybe nowadays a little bit more aware that you can quickly change a 3D design and that it isn't necessarily the final product?
So this is a key thing that I ran into, especially switching from engineering to design, is because engineers are good with 3D and not as good at sketching and stuff. Yeah, there's definitely a danger that you could like burn a design by showing something too early. It's not finished, especially if you have like kind of a good idea and you haven't really worked it out. It's like an egg, you got to kind of protect a little bit. And if you show it in a bad light too fast, then you might kill it. Um, but I kind of figured this out a few years ago that if you rely too heavily on sketches as well, that will lend itself to certain styles,
Hmm.
which are really geometry heavy, like surface kind of stuff. So for instance, like cars are basically just like surface breaks. It's mostly
Hmm.
what car design is. And so those guys focus mostly on sketching because that's a good way to work through that kind of design style. But if you wanted to do like a really nice mug, if you sketch like a nice simple mug, it's gonna look boring.
Yeah.
But when you see that thing on the table and it's got like surface finishes and gloss and like contrasts and like little subtle details, like it looks really good.
Yeah.
So it's really this thing of your tools also kind of dictate your style a little
Hmm.
bit. And all tools basically lie a little bit, like if you look at a sketch, that's not what it's going to look like exactly in real life. If you look at the computer screen, whether it's like just in like straight out of CAD, or even if you're looking at like a high quality render thing, it's still not exactly what it's going to look like in real life in like
Yeah.
real light. So you have to always kind of be aware that all your tools are just approximations of reality, even if they get close, and it's always going to look a little different.
There's this idea, and you see this all the time. There's products that are like, it's green, and it's really just there's like a green leaf on the logo or something, and you know, you make claims around it with, you know, that are kind of loose and maybe not really that green or sustainable. And then what Gray does is sort of goes in and shows you how you can use data to actually make your products more sustainable, which
Yeah,
is cool.
this is not something I invented. It's
No.
just when you see a carbon footprint, it's like how do they come up with that
Yeah.
number? But I think it's I had this like kind of not spiritual, but like I was like I want to be more sustainable because basically being industrial designers, you're making stuff for landfills,
Yeah. Yeah.
probably, for being
Sure.
honest. And just like what's a real actual way to try to make things better,
Yeah.
and the way to do it, like I'm kind of a numbers guy sometimes, so just using like data and trying to do like at least your best guess calculation, which is life cycle analysis and coming
Yep.
up with the carbon footprint among other numbers. And yeah, I kind of want to like evangelize to for designers to like do that more. It's a really good thing, and you really just start seeing the value. And the funny part about that whole journey was at the end of it, I really realized that just making things durable is probably
Yeah.
the best spent effort, and make things that can last a long time is
Yep.
probably the best thing you can do as a designer.
Yep. Just like an old used car is a way more sustainable option than any newer car, whether that's EV
Yeah.
or hybrid or whatever, it doesn't matter. The
Yeah.
older the car is, the less embodied energy you're dealing with. Um,
Especially like these old brands that just have a good name for like you know when you're growing up and your parents like, oh, you should buy like don't buy that brand, buy this brand, it'll last longer. And you're like, okay, boomer,
Yeah.
whatever. And now I'm like really into that. And I'm always
Yep.
kind of like actively trying to keep my eye out for these kinds
Yeah.
of brands that just like have this good name for just being rock solid
Yeah.
for forever. Cause that's the best thing. It's the
It
best for
is.
everybody.
It is. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's really it's great to think about that with products too, you know. I mean, I think of some of the tools in my toolbox were my dad's, you know, and they're
Yeah,
it still works and nobody had to forge any new, any new iron to make the head for the I don't have any iron forged tools, but nobody had to
yeah,
mold a new or cast a new steel head for my claw hammer or cut a tree down because that happened 50 years ago, you know.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. Like this
yeah,
kind of stuff.
I like
Or
that
like
idea.
old furniture or something that's just built of like
Yep.
solid wood just lasts, you know. So that's the message from this video.
You
Do
know,
more
and
durable junk.
yeah, yeah, and I think aesthetics come into that too. If you're always chasing down trends and trying to do something that's the most cutting edge all the time, it's maybe a little bit different with consumer products. But if you're talking about something like furniture, you know, it's you're taking a risk there that people just aren't going to want it anymore eventually. And you know, the
Yeah,
more classic you can make your design, the more universally appealing you can make it. It's probably going to be more sustainable because it's going to be more likely that people want it over time as opposed to just chucking it, right?
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, maybe a better way to say make products that last a long time is make products that will get used for a long time.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the good way to say it. So yeah, absolutely. Like I went to my cousin's place recently. He's got all this old he's really into buying old furniture and like old designer furniture and lamps and stuff. And it's just like, I mean, this lamp's from like the 70s, but it still
Yeah,
looks good. Like it's
yeah,
that's the best stuff. So that's what all designers should shoot for, including myself. But it's a lifelong craft.
yeah. Right on. Well, great conversation, man. Appreciate you coming. Can you tell us where we can find you?
Somegraythings.com. And I have a YouTube that you mentioned, which is also Some Great Things. So if you search Some Great Things, my website or YouTube, some will come up.
Yeah,
Google's pretty good these days, you know.
yeah, yeah. Can't recommend it enough. Really good stuff. And thanks for putting the effort in to share your process and these ideas out in the wider world. It's a very positive thing. So keep it up, man.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Hey everyone, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date with all things Shop Talk. If you're ready to try Fusion 3 yourself, find the link in our description.